The other debate, in addition to monetization, the best ways to do it, which has been around for a while, is the technological form factors itself. And I think that's something which many of us have been really interested in trying to get the answers to. Short form, long form. Are you programming for the big screen? Are you programming for the television screen? Are you programming for the mobile screen? It's not necessarily the same content. It's not necessarily the same experience. Should it be vertical? Should it be horizontal? All of these are questions that have been around for a while. Are we any closer to getting the definitive answers to them?
You know, I think the only thing that's definitive today is long form, short form. Nobody really cares. The content that you're making has to really reach. That has to transcend. That has to speak to a vast variety of people out there and not just, decide to live in a little bit of a cubby hole. So long form, short form, really, today when we're doing scripts, we don't even look at what is the length of the script that we're looking at. We get to that when we're budgeting. But when we're writing, there's no conversation about making it for the big screen or the small screen, because you know that there's an audience out there that will engage with you and appreciate the content you're making if you just make a great show. So I think today more than ever, the idea is standing out, not the star that's standing at the front of it, not the filmmaker that's sitting behind it, but just, in fact, today, writers have more place of pride than anybody else, I feel, in the business.
But just to take that follow-up question to that, but surely if you're making something which is short form, or 1 minute or 2 minute, it's designed more for a mobile phone. If you're making something which is a 2-hour-long movie, it is designed for a larger screen because it's tougher to do it. Or is that not the case anymore?
I think I'll jump in there. From an actual viewership point of view, the reality is this country has 95 or 96% have single TV homes, right? One TV in the house. So, and mobile phones are with almost everyone, like 600 million people have smartphones. So the reality is today, when you're creating content, you're actually being completely screen agnostic. First of all, for many, this is the only screen, right? So, and they love the content. And that's the liberating point about this, that the screen actually is not, it's my personal screen that's important. I could be watching it. If I have access to a large screen, I will pause and start playback there. If I don't, I'm perfectly happy with this. There are challenges of distraction which are very different. For example, the same screen has your message coming in, your call coming in, and if I drop off or I go back, that's the engagement point, the two of them talked about here. In TVs, you're more lean back and all of that. But I don't think at all we distinguish the segment customers when we're creating great stories basis, hey, X customer has a mobile and Y customer has a living room device or Z has a computer. That is not relevant at all. What's relevant is our content engaging, and whatever your choice of device is for you, you choose and watch and enjoy it.
Anjana, is that a pattern everywhere? Or is it, see, in India, we are very used to the power and the dominance of mobile phones, A, because they're ubiquitous, and B, because data is so cheap that it almost doesn't matter the amount you're streaming. By mistake, if you ever wander into Canada and say, I'm going to stream on my mobile, on my mobile phone on a mobile plan, you'll be bankrupt in like 2 days, right? So you have to think about it.
No kidding, yeah. No, it is the case, and I think he's right. Gaurav is right. It's about the engagement of a story, and it got me thinking, even as Indian content creators start to tell stories of the world, the distinguishing factor to that soft power component will be that representation aspect. Let me use an example as an analogy. Typically the joke is when you watch a Hollywood movie, be it a long or for short form, when they have a Mexico filter, it's like the shades on kind of thing. When it's an African story, there's an accent, and it's like there's only one Hollywood accent, African accent trainer or something. The engagement on the story, long form, short form, whatever will come after the mobile phone, is what will really, keep people hooked. A story that, people see themselves in or challenges them. And actually, most importantly, right now, beyond the West, for people in Africa, elsewhere, a story that tells any part about them that is as true and authentic to that experience over and above a curated imagination that we know, Right Lions or something like that, is what will keep people hooked, and that's what will keep creating the market, and actually even having the cascading effects where if money here is not the problem, you guys can come and invest, right? And work with folks on the other side. Yeah.
Okay, so as I try and get final thoughts from everyone before throwing it up to the audience, Indian content, let's just look a little bit ahead in the future, next 4 years, 5 years. To what extent do you see Indian content increasingly becoming a major factor globally, right? Going to more and more countries, becoming a major instrument of Indian soft power? And the quality of it, is it going to be as good as the best in the world?
Yeah, so I think, Vikram, I'm very, very confident and very optimistic, and I think the future is very bright. I think there's going to be a lot of that happening, and as you said, I think, and I mean it at the highest level and at the highest quality, and I mean it across the board. I just don't mean it in terms of service. I think, you know, we need to start getting more Oscar nomination movies. We need to do it across the board. We need to get more Grammys. We need to get more Emmys. I mean, it's all part of that larger extending pool. And I think we're at that place today where, you know, we have the talent. And I mean, you know, I don't mean this in a bad way, but we also have the viewing numbers. We're just such a large country and so many of us outside that we also have a huge population, which will always help also in exporting this, even within the diaspora. But I think today we're really at that point where we have amazing talent. We have technicians to tell and execute those stories in a manner which can be world class. And I think, you know, the South has really shown that. I mean, if you kind of see the videos that are on YouTube on the kind of responses that an absolutely white audience is having to a film like RRR in, you know, local boutique theaters in LA, which are not your standard AMC and your standard kind of global chain theaters, but in local theaters, you will be astounded that we're there. We're already there. We've started that march. So now really the onus is very much on us. I think it's not on doing it once, it's doing it consistently, and it's doing it even better as we go along. And, you know, I think some of the filmmakers said this 10 years ago and it hasn't happened. But I'm going to take another punt at it and say in the next 10 years, I will not be surprised if the next Spider-Man or the next Batman is an Indian actor. So, you know, let's clock it from now to 10 years. But I think that's a real possibility now.
Angita, your overall your take on that?
You know, honestly, I think we've been excellent storytellers right from the top. You know, like he said, you know, from Satyajit Ray to Rajamouli, we've kind of told stories really phenomenally. So I don't think that's really new where we're concerned. What I think is really new is streaming. That's the new kid on the block, right? And that takes us and sticks us smack in the middle of every content conversation today in the world. Are we making content as good as our peers in the West? Absolutely. I think there's a lot of content being made, and plenty of it is on the same stage as our Western counterparts. It's a matter of time, really, and the world's recognizing it. The world's talking to us. Everybody's talking to us. LA's dialing Mumbai every day. You know, it's a very fertile time. And absolutely, I think the content that we're making right now, it's going places. It's doing really good things.
Part of the reason why the United States has played such a dominant role in the 21st century was not just military power, but was soft power. American culture was the defining culture in many ways of the previous century. Is there a chance that countries like India could start doing that in the next 20, 30 years?
I don't know that India or other countries should be trying to replace what has been. It's just to be as authentic in a representation that then others see themselves in. The difference with Hollywood is, for many of us outside, that was the only content you could pretty much access. Yeah. You know, that said, so there's a whole, you know, context to it. But I think rather than replicate it, is just tell stories and open that up for people to be seen and feel seen. And that's how you create markets, and that's actually how you sustain the audiences back, whether it's a long form or short form. So I think it would be it's not even about meeting the Western standard, it's just setting the standard of what is there to be told. And it may even flip this question, and eventually Hollywood is looking at the standard that has been created, because you're following the true path here, which is there are so many new stories to be told over and above the template Hollywood had set.
Right. Gaurav, last word from you. So the reason why Hollywood could do that is, as she said, Hollywood was the only content most people could access. They were the only people who had the ability to get their films into cinema theaters everywhere. Streaming changes that. Streaming has obviously seen a massive jump during the pandemic. I guess the final question is, how much of this is temporary and how much of this is permanent, the changes?
I think that the temporary part, the only temporary part was the fact people had more time that time. So you could do more hours in a day of streaming. But the permanent part is that the habits that you formed are permanent. If you moved from non-streaming to streaming, or you changed you started watching more genres of content, you started consuming some things only online versus what you're doing elsewhere, or happy to watch movies at home, and new movies at home, and still go to theaters for some. All of that is a habit-changing piece. The second habit-changing piece is what I talked about, is linguistic. The fact is, you're no longer saying that what's going to be my list is only my language, because now all of this is my language. So I think that's permanent. The very big implication for that, for us, in our soft power view, is that we now, while we had 10 content industries, for the first time we are one unified Indian content industry, which has so much more to offer to customers India and abroad, and even more strengthening our view to how India can export its soft power.
All right, I think we have enough time for a couple of questions. If I can see a show of hands, yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Wasim, a GTS Young Ambassador from Kautilya School of Public Policy. In the past, we have seen there have been some calls for boycott and harsh reactions against some web series and movies because they seemingly hurt the sentiments of public in India. So if there's a brilliant script which can cater to the global audience but might seem risky in India, how do you navigate this space? How do you give the best creative output to the global audience without compromising or self-censorship on the script? Thank you.
You always have to be sensitive to the people around you. It's as simple as that. You come from a particular city, a particular country. You can't diss that to be able to get to a global audience. So I think as content makers and creators, just like there are 5 of us on the stage today, and we're respectful of each other and allowing each other to finish saying what we want to, because before we step up, I think you just need to be respectful of sentiments around you, and take each day as it comes in that sense.
All right, the gentleman there.
Hello, am I audible? Yeah, okay. My name is Rijul Sarstev. I'm a GTS Young Ambassador from IIIT Bangalore. So this is a question to the panel in general. I was just wondering, typically nowadays, if you walk into a bookshop, you're not likely to see too many Indian authors unless it's a Chetan Bhagat or an Amish Tripathi or something like that. Now, it's also true that the average Indian reads a lot less than his Western counterpart. Now, with that, and keeping that concept in mind, now KDP has revolutionized publishing, it's true, but there are also a lot of self-publishing houses that have come up. So do you feel, as content creators and as OTT people, do you feel that there's a need to embrace novelists, writers, poets out there and get their feed as well as the traditional scriptwriters, or not?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of that is happening. I think there's a lot of books that are being transformed into shows, into movies, and I think that it's happening more than ever before. So I think. But
do you think it's happening as much as it is in the West?
And I think it might be more nascent in comparison to the West, because the West probably started doing a lot more of it much earlier. But I think actually there is a huge demand. In fact, I would say that what we're lacking right now is original storytelling. I feel actually, if you really think of it, a lot of our storytelling is either some form of taking away from either a book or another movie, or an international movie or a South remake, and I think a lot of that is happening. So in fact, I think there is enough of literature, if I may say so, that is being brought into the system. But again, actually, I think one of the big challenges, as you said, what I have noticed, at least amongst most of my colleagues and friends, is I think content creators of today have started reading less, and I think that's a huge problem. I think a lot of us have started watching a lot more, which is great for business, but for original storytelling, I think the big problem is that we're not reading enough. And actually, if you go back, leave alone books and kind of movies, we go back to our basic literature. Even if you just go back to Ramayana and Mahabharata, I'm telling you, there is a treasure trove of stories that we have not even scratched the surface of before we start trying to copy the Chronicles of Narnia or the Avatars of the world. There's an entire pool out there that is, underserviced to today's very, very exposed audience.
All right, I suspect we are flat out of time, so thank you all so much for having been with us. Thank you so much.
As India takes center stage with G20 presidency, thought leaders, industry experts, policymakers and stalwarts from India Inc. converge on the most coveted platform of technology-led geopolitics. What are the challenges and opportunities for India in the shape-shifting world of international alliances? Watch the Global Technology Summit exclusively on WION.